All right, you guys, hello. I'm here to briefly talk to you a little bit about the politics that are going on X. Remember I talked about a video, I think it was the last video I made about Charlie Kirk. So what's been going on if you haven't been keeping up? I believe today we are going to see Erica Kirk's City Hall interview. I believe it's by CBS. And lately she has been coming out, spreading the news about Charlie Kirk's last book that is coming out. It's already out. I guess you can purchase it. I did. And it's about the Sabbath. It's a topic that I'm very interested in. I have been for over a year, and so it's a great like interaction. I'm very interested. Have been keeping up as much as I can with what's been going on with TPUSA, which is the organization that Charlie Kirk founded, and now his wife is the CEO of. And so it's like a merge, right? It's like Charlie Kirk's book on the Sabbath. So the two things that I'm very interested in, they are merging, and I can't wait to share what I read with you later on. So Erica has been going on, I guess, a book tour, and at the same time, Candace Owens, a YouTuber, she has been going on and on for 3 months nonstop. It's like every single podcast ever since she started talking about the topic. It has been very infuriating for a lot of people, and it has been very entertaining, or maybe even frightful to the people that live in that kind of mindset about I'll say it this way. It's healthy to be skeptical about our government, but if you take it to the degree where you can't even know what is true about anything, you can't even trust any single thing about our leaders, our country, our the system that is in place in our country that makes our country, I would say, the best country in the world. If you can't trust that there's something that God blessed about the structure of our government, then I guess maybe you might say, well, yeah, I do trust that that's the right way, but I don't trust the people. So that's good, that's healthy. You shouldn't just blindly trust anyone, right? But at the same time, I believe we shouldn't also just blindly distrust people unless you have actual good reasons for you to distrust someone. That has gotten me in a good place as far as having a healthy skepticism, and at the same time just being mindful of making sure that whatever I believe is supported by facts and good reasons. You shouldn't just be living in conspiracy land. She has been talking a lot of very harmful things to the people that work at TPUSA, in particular, also their Christian faith branch, and the leaders and those closest to Charlie Kirk. And even now she has started talking not so nicely about Erica Kirk, talking about how she doesn't believe it was the right decision for her to become the CEO, even mentioning how she wishes that they would have hired Candace said this about herself, in order to help them to know how to navigate, I guess, something like online. And for me, it's comical that she says that, because aside from her podcast, there would be no need for them to have to defend themselves against a lot of baseless accusations and allegations. And I want to talk about this because I know there are a lot of videos out there already, and this is a Christian channel. As far as if you are interested in learning what Christians believe, what Christianity teaches, this is the channel for you. And we do try to apply the way that we live our life, every topic, including the topic of politics, we do our best to always go back to the Bible, God's word, and make sure we're making decisions based off of what his commands are for us. I know my channel focuses on Christian content. The reason I'm talking about this in particular has to do with Christianity does mesh a lot with what is going on in the online world, especially YouTubers. Candace Owens has a very large YouTube channel. I guess she made it to like the #1 podcast at one point. I don't know how often she reaches that title. She has like this big cross in the background, and I would say that she attempts to represent Catholicism on her channel, and that's why I feel it's necessary for Christians and Catholics. But I mean, I'm a Protestant Christian, so I believe that anyone that is saying that they believe in Jesus and they are representing Jesus, here on earth, it's our duty as Christians, Protestant Christians, to make it known to the public when something is inconsistent with what Christianity actually teaches. And I see that a lot happening regarding this other mesh of where it seems like Charlie Kirk was kind of a pioneer about acknowledging that it is possible to hold an organization that does politics and at the same time wants to push for politics that are consistent with Christian values, Christian views. And so the organization of TPUSA, it seems to me that it is something that Christians, especially people like myself who are very interested in politics, and we want to, just always be mindful about how can our Christianity impact also the political world, not just our day-to-day, personal lives and the places where God has placed us in, but we recognize that God has placed us in a country as well, and that we have the responsibility as Christians to shine the light, and where possible, right? If we can have an influence in the government, then why wouldn't you be a light in the government as well? So it seems to me that it's a good thing for our country, for TPUSA to continue to exist and to continue to thrive. There have been allegations made that by Candace's podcast, even if she's not the one that came up with the things that she has said, she has been someone that has been like the megaphone for it. So I do hold her responsible for the things that she has shared on her podcast. For example, she has made the public question the innocence of the organization, and she has made it seem like there are people in that organization that are still holding their career roles. However, Charlie had placed them in his organization, that these people are still, that they benefited from Charlie being assassinated. And so what Candace has recently posted lately is that she does believe that the evidence shows that Tyler Robinson, the person that is arrested and the only suspect so far in jail for the murder of Charlie Kirk, she has now come to say that she does believe that he pulled the trigger, but that she doesn't believe he was the last one to make that call, or the person to make the call. I'm editing this part and I'm starting to think, wait, maybe she didn't mean that. Maybe she literally meant that she doesn't believe that, even though there's evidence that Tyler's DNA is on the actual, I believe they said it's on the actual trigger. It's definitely somewhere on the gun, even on the bullet. Does she believe that someone else shot him? It's so unclear. If you believe something, just say it and own it. In a sense, she's giving him responsibility for doing the deed, but she's implying that that he doesn't hold all of the responsibility. And so when Candace says that, one can only assume that she means, based off of everything that she has said for the last at least couple of years regarding Israel, we can only assume that what she means when she says that is that she believes that Israel was the one that gave the order to eliminate Charlie Kirk. One can only assume that she means there were corrupt people within the organization of TPUSA that were connected with Israel and so forth. It's very interesting how I can put the pieces together without her verbally saying it, like explicitly, That's the situation. I wanted to talk about that, about what's been going on. Monday is the day that, when it is Monday, like right now it's Saturday. I want to give you the day. On the 15th of December, the organization, I don't just want to call it the organization because that sounds kind of weird, TPUSA is going to be dedicating a live stream where they will be answering questions and responding to allegations made by Candace Owens specifically. And they decided that they are going to bring in people that she has tainted their reputation and made false claims about, that these people are going to be there, I believe live. It sounded to me like they meant that they would be live. They had invited her to join them. She had said yes. I think she spoke for herself, but then after that, she said yes, any place, anytime. After that episode, her husband told her no, not that day and not that place. She says that her husband is busy that day and that he's going to be having people coming over from overseas, which, I mean, can you give us a little more detail? Because to me, that if I was thinking like Candace, I would think like, who? Like, is Israel coming over to your house? Or is, Qatar? Or like, who in the world is coming? Is it your in-laws? I mean, okay, no more details. But I feel like it's a little hypocritical to say like people from overseas are coming to my house and that's why my husband can't, Anyway, so he said no to her desire to be there in person, apparently. Or the story is a little vague because at the same time she makes it seem like she didn't understand that they were asking her to be in person, that she assumed, I guess, that she could do it live stream, and she was pushing for live stream. But for matters this personal, it's important to have conversations in person. The dynamic is just so different. So anyway, that's what's going on. I'm super excited to watch that. And where I have landed on this is that Candace is not going to change her mind. She's not going to stop talking, even though Erica, on one of the most recent interviews, they keep asking her about Candace Owens, and she has looked into the camera and she has said stop. And Candace said no. So anyway, a lot of people are turning on Candace Owens now. People okay, if that's how we want to describe things, but like, just people are starting to come out of the shadows and are starting to be like, hey, like, now that Erica has spoken out about this situation, now people, I believe, if you're gonna give them some grace, I think that people now believe that, okay, now that we've heard from the boss herself that where her position is, that she does not like what Candace is doing, now we feel more comfortable with coming out and sharing our views also, that we don't want her going after Erica Kirk and the people that work there, I guess. Asking questions, as Candace likes to put it, is not the same thing that she's doing, because you can ask questions, but remember in Genesis when the serpent also asked a question, but it wasn't just a question. It was a lie within a little bit of truth and a little bit of deception, and that got Eve to, ultimately disobey God, rebel against God, and offer the forbidden fruit to her husband, Adam. And that's why we are living in this sinful world, and we need to be repenting of our sins and asking God to forgive our sins, and putting our trust in Jesus Christ, that what he did on the cross is enough for us to be saved and to have eternal life one day. I had to throw that in there. But now what I am interested in talking to you about is, after all this time, I truly do believe that God supernaturally starts to give people, I mean, maybe it doesn't have to be Christians, but definitely Christians. God will give like wisdom to Christians. He can choose to speak through anyone that he chooses. And I believe one of the people that he has been speaking through lately is, I forget his name. I want to say his name is John McKay. Whaddoyoumeme guy. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. I remember your name and then I forget it because my memory does that. It seems to like, yeah, I don't need that information anymore. Sorry about that. But he has been so spot on. He has a couple of videos on Candace that I have seen, especially the most recent one. I really, really think that's sobering. I recommend that you watch it. I'll leave it in the description below so you can check it out. You can find it easier that way, I guess. But he says a lot of good things, but one of the things is that it's pointless to come at Candace with facts and logic, because what she has been doing is she has been, you know, like how the serpent in the Garden of Eden, he like places little doubts into Eve's mind, like distrust. Don't trust God. God just doesn't want blah, blah, blah. And I believe it's the same evil, like, do we call it spirit or do we call it, it's the same author of deception that is happening in the smooth way that Candace, someone can come with the truth and she can like get out of it very like slippery. It's a very, very, some people call it smart, but it's just, it's very similar to like how the serpent, even God tells us in the New Testament, he says, be innocent as doves and wise as serpents, you know? So anyway, she has been doing this for 3 months. You know, from like one side of her mouth, she says high praises about Charlie, about Erica for a while, and then out of the other side of her mouth, she casts doubt. And so John McCrae, I think is his name, he says that they will not, TPUSA, they're not going to win on Monday because everyone is going to be listening to their facts and everything that they're going to share, their feelings, everything, any emotion shown, anything. People are going to hear and see them with distrust, because that's what Candace has been doing for months, okay? And so he says that what they should actually do is, why don't you do this? Well, not the serpent type, but I think technically John is kind of saying that it's still kind of like throw facts her way, but do it in a way that her audience will respond to the way that Candace has like trained her viewers, her listeners to think. So he suggests that TPUSA cast doubt on Candace by pointing out that in the same way that Candace has been very skeptical and accusatory of the FBI, the government, recently she had said that France was trying to assassinate her. And so she said, and I went to this government and I went to this department, and she said, and I sent a a text message to someone high up in the FBI. And she said something about like, and it went all the way to the desk of Trump, but he didn't really want to like follow up on it or anything like that. He wasn't really interested, I guess. And so the next like time we heard her talking about it, she was just like really like surprised that nobody really responded to that. And so it's like, well, why do you have a connection like in the government that's really high up there? Like, why did you even trust or expect our government to like protect you or to be interested in the supposed death threat that she received, if you're saying that the government is not trustworthy? So it's like, you see what I'm saying? It's like, why not cast some doubt her way? Because there is a lot of things that you can point out that is inconsistent with her actions and the things that she says about our government. So anyway, I wanted to talk about how, one more thing, GAD, G-A-D, I saw a quick little clip of him talking about this, about like, something like, what can you do about people, for example, like Candace and her viewers? And he said that he has learned that the first thing that you have to do when you're talking to someone is figure out if they are someone that you're not wasting your time with. Like if it's going to make a difference what you say, like facts. And if you figure out that this person, nothing I can say to that person is going to change their opinion about something, then like there's no point. You're never going to convince those people. And so I believe that's the situation with Candace and a lot of her supporters. Also, thinking about it spiritually, there seems to be a case for, in the Bible, it teaches us about how it's possible for us to harden our own hearts, like Pharaoh, for example, when God was delivering his people from Egypt, who had them in slavery. Pharaoh hardened his own heart against God. He did not want to let God's people go. And then eventually the Bible says God said that he would harden Pharaoh's heart. So we see that Pharaoh first hardens his heart, and then God would harden it, I guess, even more, like harden his resolve. Like if he wanted to go up against God, then God, sorry, my hands made a noise. God was going to harden Pharaoh's resolve so that he would be even more like stubborn against God, and God was going to use that resolve so he could glorify himself and he could judge Egypt for their idolatry of false gods. And I believe that God was giving testimony of himself so that the rest of the nations, for example, the people in Jericho had heard about all the powerful miracles God had done in Egypt, and they were terrified of Israel and they were terrified of their God. Some put their trust in him, like Rahab, right? If we're going to see what's going on through a spiritual lens, which you always have to remember to do that, right? That's the goal of this channel in particular. That's my personal goal in my life, not to see the world through a like religious and a secular like separation, but that we always think, no, actually God is relevant in the secular as well. So what is going on with this organization that is trying to bring an impact into our country through God, through faith, that's something spiritual, and the enemy definitely wants to oppose that. The enemy doesn't want our country to be more God-like. It doesn't want Christianity to flourish, and so it's going to come against one of the most impactful organizations in the political world, especially where they go to try to persuade young people into seeing things through a more conservative lens and through a religious Christian perspective, through a Christian worldview. And so you can see how the enemy would want to oppose that. And many of us have come to the conclusion that Satan is behind what Candace Owens is doing through her podcast, the things that she is saying. She even asked a couple of weeks ago, I believe, for people to ask for refunds for any donations that they have given to TPUSA, I believe. And I don't know if it was to that or to the faith department. I'm not sure, but definitely that would harm and maybe bring that organization to a close. And I believe that's what really made Erica to come out and be more vocal now. But that was right after that. That's when they decided to make a video and say that on that day that I mentioned on Monday, they were going to address what was going on. Anyway, without going into so much detail, I'll try to put that video also in the link below if you're interested. So, the spiritual component. I was talking about how God can harden someone's heart. Whether it's to that degree that it's past where Candace is hardening her own heart. I don't know if maybe God is at this point hardening her heart because God wants to glorify himself similarly as he did in the past. It's very interesting because Israel was involved at the first hardening in the Bible, right? That as far as I think that might have been the first hardening. I'm not too sure. Later on, we hear in the New Testament how the people that were there and wanted to kill Jesus, they were hardened as well and blind, and they couldn't see, they couldn't understand the gospel just yet. And God used that hardening in order to bring about his will, his plan of redemption. So what is God doing? Is God doing something through Candace? And it's sad because she talks about herself as though she's on God's side. And so many of us Christians are discerning that no, she's not. She's not on God's side. And why? Because God is all about the truth. And if she was all about the truth, then she would be more careful with the way she goes about what she calls her investigation. Also, why should she brag that she became the #1 podcast? Like, is that what God wants you to do, to become the #1 podcast? I think that speaking the truth will actually make you very unpopular. That's something that's going on. There's some spiritual component going on, and in this time in history, we are at the place where Jesus hasn't come yet, and he's not reigning, on the earth just yet. And so there's a lot of darkness happening, a lot of demonic work. And the Bible tells us also that in those last days, people will say what is evil is good and what is good is evil. And I believe that's what's going on with Candace, that what she says is God, it's actually the devil. And if we are wrong about that, God will definitely, I know that God will bring clarity to us, because we who truly are seeking him and we want to live according to his truth, we're seeking truth. I believe God will always bring the truth to us. Even if there was some truth behind conspiracy theories, I believe that God reveals what he wants us to know. Because also, have you guys ever asked the question in the Bible where you're like, is there any answer to my question in the Bible? And sometimes it's like, well, no. And I tell my kids, if God really wanted us to know that, he would have, told us in the Bible. It must be the case that we don't have to know about that, The same way, if you have questions about conspiracies, or like, for example, if for example, Candace has so many questions about our government, about Israel, and even about Charlie Kirk's the investigation itself. Not hers, but the one that is actually happening professionally. We're not always going to be given all of the answers, all of the information, and it's almost like she wants to be omniscient, and the only one that can know everything is God. So those of us that are truly following Jesus Christ, we trust him that he's going to reveal what he wants to reveal, and that, we pray that the investigation and that everything will, work for good. The evil that happened to Charlie Kirk, to no matter what you believe, the things that he said, like sometimes I just have to ignore certain things that I hear some of the organization people talk about, like little things like names or whatever that they use that are off-putting. I mean, so I can understand if some people are like, no, I can't ignore that. I can't believe he used to say these things and blah blah blah. I get it, but at the same time, don't let that take away the your love that God has commanded you to have towards your neighbor, So yeah, that investigation is going on, and a lot of what's being alleged against TPUSA has a lot to do with Israel. And Candace was already talking against Israel, so it kind of seems it seems like if the nicest way to think about it in terms of Candace is that she was already convinced that Israel has a history of terrible things, to put it very, very simply. And she has been reading and listening to a lot of people, and so that's the new thing that she has replaced her old way of thinking about Israel. She has changed it to the things that she shares and the things that she believes. So it makes sense that when something happened to Charlie, for all of us, we're like, this is a tragic thing, but in her mind, what was probably going on was like, I can't believe Israel did this to my friend. And, so it's like a totally different experience. And so we're angry that this happened to him, but she's really angry because she was already ready to go to war against this nation. And yeah, she was already on that boat, and then this happens, and now she's even more hardened, let's say it that way. And the worst way to see it is that she used the tragedy that happened to Charlie to push her narrative. Even if she believes it's true or not, using a tragedy to grow your podcast, it's just evil. So yeah, I wanted to just say very quickly that if I had a chart right here, on one side it goes from very, very extreme to very, very extreme, and we like to see it as the extreme right and the extreme left. I know people debate that, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to say that exists. Also, I'm not sure if you can see it instead as a circle, where or how would I describe it? The line, the line that I'm telling you starts like this, and then at the end, both of the extremists they're holding hands over here because they both hate Israel for their own reasons. It's funny. I just saw myself like I don't have eyebrows here. Anyway, so the way I see it, and feel free to add more descriptions or whatever to my timeline. The way I see it is on the right, the extreme right, you have Candace Owens types, Tucker Carlson. Technically, Charlie Kirk, he allowed them to share the stage because he was trying to grow a coalition of like-minded people, even if they disagreed politically about not like the most fundamental things, I guess, the way he saw it. And I do believe that Tucker and Candace have become way more radical after Charlie's assassination than how Charlie, perceived them or whatever. So you have those two, for example, that people like the media is going to label them as being conservatives because of how, for example, Tucker used to be on Fox News and Candace used to talk against Black Lives Matter, and she was with PragerU and with Daily Wire and got fired from both of those because of her hateful views of Jews. I promise you she wouldn't have been fired had she not been prejudiced against Jewish people. You have those types, and they hate, and they make it their life's mission to make America hate Israel, to make America suspicious of Israel, and to not hold hands with them, pretty much, like politically. And for example, Candace, you have a lot of commentators, but in particular, Candace was very vocal about using the Gaza war, Israel-Gaza war, as, again, she used the tragedy in order to push her narrative against Israel. I can't be explaining in detail why I'm saying things the way I am, so I'm just gonna try to focus here. And some would say that people are getting paid on this side, that there are nations that are very interested in Israel losing the United States support, because without the US support, one might argue, I wonder if they would have been able to defeat Hamas, because it wasn't just Hamas, it was all the other nations that, because of their religious beliefs, they want to, they believe that the land belongs to them instead of Israel. And thus the word Zionism was born, the push for Israel to be a nation. And after World War II, a lot of Jews, there was an agenda to bring as many Jews back to their homeland, where they were at in biblical times. And there was a whole political reason. Someone drew the borders, and so it exists now because of that. And so the people like Candace will believe that there were a lot of conspiracies, that there were a lot of evil men behind the creation of this, and that they have so much influence, and that they're controlling everything, and that they have a very fragile view of our country. And so anyway, you have those extremists on the right side. Then you have just your typical conservatives, your typical Republicans, that maybe they just don't even care about, they don't care about Israel. You probably have like people, for example, that they are not Zionists, but they're not anti-Zionists either, and they are isolationists, and they only care about their country. In my opinion, it's a very naive perspective, and I would challenge you and push you on that, because where no island can exist by itself, okay? We wouldn't have become this nation if not for this factor and this factor, like globally. So it's like you need to make friends in this world in order to succeed and to maintain your power and maintain your land and all of that. So then you have your Zionists, Republicans or conservatives, and they are very much interested, like Charlie Kirk, for example. They're interested because our Christianity roots are there. That was one of the things he said, that I'm very interested in, that Israel remain in control of the land because of all the holy sites that are there. And that would be my reason too. I definitely want people that value the faith, the faith of the origins, for example, of the beginnings of Israel, all of that history of the Old Testament, and then what was going on with Jesus, all those places that I would love to visit one day, God willing. I really, really want it to remain in the hands of an ally of the United States. Not just that, but you see the Middle East and you see, wow, there's true democracy in Israel versus other countries around it. There's freedom of religion in Israel, as opposed to their neighbors who don't allow certain people to safely even drive by or walk by in certain places for, their religious reasons and so forth, political reasons that are intertwined. Then you have your, want to call it liberals or moderates, your people in the middle that they don't really like independence. They don't really want to be labeled Republicans. Maybe they hate Republicans. Maybe they think Democrats are really crazy, especially like now. A lot of people feel that the Democrats abandoned them, that they went so extreme that they don't fit into the party anymore. And I think there are, especially Christians that are Democrats, and I know some people are like, ugh, that cannot exist, but the reality is that yes, there are people that believe in Jesus Christ, and at the same time that they check the Democrat box. Some of those Christians, I believe, they would share my views about, Israel, let Israel continue to, exist as a nation, and let them take care of these holy sites. Then there are probably, if we're going to stick to the timeline over there, you would have like those middle people that are also isolationists, and they're like, I don't care, I don't care about Israel. I think Tim Pool actually just said that he's somewhere in the middle, and he doesn't really think much about Israel, even though they're accusing him of being paid by Israel. And and then after that, now you start to get your Democrats that are anti-Zionism, which fall more into like the Marxist type of arguments, where they see Israel as oppressors and that the Palestinians deserve their land. That's what they believe, that you hear them on the campuses chanting, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. In other words, they don't want Israel. They want the Arab people to take over, because they have their own arguments about the land, how it belongs to them, and all of that. And that's where I mean that the extreme right and the extreme left, they both meet together and like, hey, like they're holding hands and they're like, yes, we hate Israel and we don't want them to exist as a nation. For whatever reasons, they have the same goal. They're going to probably work together. And I think that's how I would describe my timeline of what's really going on. You have people like Candace Owens who came to the online audience and started complaining, hey, why are you guys calling me an anti-Semite? I mean, like, let's be real. Like, if you really are against Zionism, just own the label. If you're an anti-Semite, the thing is that people don't want to donate to you. People don't want to work with you, unless they believe the same things. And so they claim to be victims and, like, start your own group if that's what you want to be all about. But don't act like you're a victim because they fired you for saying things that don't line up with the people that, are your listeners or your donors. And so, yeah, I think the way I would see anti-Semitic people, the way I would define it is I would use Zionism as the foundation. You do not believe that Israel should exist as a nation. And I think that would be, I would call you an anti-Zionist if you don't believe that Israel deserves to be a nation in itself. I would call you an anti-Semite if you hold prejudices against Jewish people, if you're suspicious of Jewish people just because they are Jewish. I would consider that a form of racism. And and the spreading of conspiracy theories that have no real basis, in no evidence, and that you are spreading it as if it was truth. And I would consider you an anti-Semite. So people that are like isolationists, I wouldn't. If you hold no prejudice against Jewish people, and you are consistent, and you're like, I don't want our government giving money to any country. I just want us to give all of our money to just ourselves, our country. I don't want us to, be going into wars for any other country. Like I said, I would consider that position naive. And I don't mean it to insult you, but I don't think that that's realistic. I believe that we do have to have a heart for our best interest, and that includes our interactions with the rest of the world. What is in our best interest? And it's terrible how we have seen our government neglect our own citizens in, for example, like relief situations where natural tragedies have happened, and for there to have not been enough money for Americans, and yet we are using money for other people. That's our tax dollars. So I understand the heart behind isolationism, but I think it's important to discern, am I truly saying that I don't want us to support Israel because I'm an isolationist, or is there something more going on in my heart? And God, can you please bring that to my attention? Is there prejudice in my heart against Jewish people? And also, God hasn't taught us to be selfish either. So there has to be a healthy balance, right? Like, how generous is it biblical for America to be as far as other nations are concerned? So anyway, continuing. So going the other direction, I think that's it. Both extreme sides would, in my opinion, would be anti-Semitic, because they are lumping a group of people. They're saying there's so much malice, and I'm suspicious of them because of where they are from, or because of their religion. I'm suspicious of their religion because of this or that. And where do you learn those suspicious things? In the false conspiracy theories out there. There are anti-Semites And, look at their life. They're using their podcast with an agenda. What impact are they trying to have globally or in our country? And don't be manipulated, because you have people that, like Candace, is complaining, why can't we talk about this? Why can't we talk about Israel? And I think even Charlie fell for that a little bit, where he felt offended that he felt it was emotional manipulation for his Jewish donors for them to have stopped funding TPUSA, because of Tucker. And it's not emotional manipulation as far as I'm aware, because who knows, maybe there was more to it that does fall under emotional manipulation. But I think he was referencing it to like Candace Owens, because people would ask him, like, are you ever going to debate Candace Owens about the things she says? He did say that suspicion of Israel is demonic, but at the same time, he took it as a way of, no, you're not going to emotionally blackmail me into not being friends with people that are speaking badly about Israel. And so in the same way that he had the right, I think I've talked about this before in the past, in the same way that he has the right to be disappointed about losing a donor, and he has the right to think that, it was manipulation, in the same way, the donors have the right to not give money to an organization that is platforming someone that is saying things that are not in their best interest and that they don't feel is going to better the United States. And even if it is the case that Israel does fund people to say good things about Israel or whatever, there's a right way to go about it. Like, if you have an ambassador for a country, that's your job. If you are the prime minister, that's your job to have good relations globally. That's not a bad thing. And if you do have a problem with Israel in particular, with the U.S. supporting Israel financially or militarily, why are we not talking about all the other people that are having an influence to our country that have malicious intent? If you believe Israel has malicious intent, why aren't you talking about China? Look at what's going on, for example, in TikTok. How our TikTok in America is completely different to TikTok in like Asia, where it's more educationally based, and over here it was said that they were pushing a lot of the LGBTQ agenda on our TikTok, and what kind of an influence are they purposely trying to have on our country? We should be talking about all of them. So I'm very suspicious when you only talk about Israel and you don't mention everyone else. For example, when Candace was opposed to what she would call a genocide happening to the Gazans, but she did not utter a single word about all the Christians being slaughtered at a greater amount, a frequency and total in Nigeria. So that's suspicious. That's true grounds for being suspicious. Anyone that is honest talks about the problem and all the parties involved in that same problem. You don't just hammer the same nail, Israel, 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 because if that's all you're doing, there's something to that. You have an agenda. It's not just an interest, but it's like, what is your purpose? What are you trying to accomplish? And so people like her will say, don't call me anti-Semitic, or like, they've called me everything, so don't take that seriously that I'm anti-Semitic. No. Also, those same people that have a problem, that think that they're being censored because they're talking badly or asking questions about Israel, including Charlie. I think he had a little bit about that feeling. Maybe it was influenced by Candace, maybe Tucker. Look at the people you hang out with. They're definitely going to influence you. Not to speak ill of the dead, but just we have to talk about the fact that he considered both of those people his friends. And so obviously they would have some sort of influence on him regarding Israel. They're the loudest voices. And so how can they be right that in our government we are trying to censor people from talking badly about Israel when they are the ones with the largest podcasts right now? They're like the most famous people. YouTube, X is like giving them all of the money and all of the views. It doesn't make sense. We have to think about the reality of in the world that we're living in. I get it if they were being like, their podcasts wouldn't reach like more than a few people. Wow, yeah, they're that's suspicious. Someone in the higher ups don't want that message to be spread. To me, it's suspicious that anti-Israel content spreads like wildfire right now. And so for example, people that say that they feel that they can't talk or ask questions about Israel because they're afraid of being called anti-Semites. I mean, sticks and stones, right? Like it comes down to the money, sadly. Someone doesn't want to be labeled that because they don't want to lose money. And Charlie, one can argue that he had good reasons for wanting to be concerned about money, because what did he need that money for? He had a lot of people's livelihoods on his shoulders, right? And he had goals for the nation, and he was trying to live according to God's purposes in our government and all of that. You can be very concerned about money and have good reasons for it, but I mean, what is the reason for Candace and Tucker, for example? Like, what are they using their money for, right? Where is it going? What do they need so much money for? Is that greed? Is that biblical? So if fame is all someone is trying to get, then that's not biblical. That's not godly. We need to make Jesus famous, right? Not ourselves. So people that speak against, or even it sounds like they're in favor of Israel. People like Tim Pool, for example. People that speak against Candace, Tucker. Well, now all of a sudden people are saying, you're getting paid by Israel. So why are you... It sounds more like we can't even question the anti-Zionists without being accused of being funded by Israel. That's true. That's true. It's a little game that's happening. I encourage us to see through it and own your beliefs. If you believe that Israel deserves to be a nation and that the United States or whatever country you're from ought to be in favor and support and be an ally to Israel, you might have biblical, like when I say biblical, like you have reasons, arguments that are based off of your interpretation of the Bible. If you believe like in end times and all of that, I mean, obviously as Christians we believe in end times, but there are different views, and some tend to be more critical of Israel, and even some Christians fall into what I would consider, I think that there are some interpretations within Christian denominations. Do I want to say denominations? I don't know. Eschatological views, let's say that, within certain end times views, that some of those Christians would fall under what I would consider anti-Semitic. So yeah, anyway, it's possible for you to believe. I think that I hold to certain Old Testament arguments. I base mine mostly on the Old Testament, as far as that I'm not sure if God teaches us in the Bible that he doesn't want Israel to be a nation in the future, and as far as God gave Israel land, since I feel like I'm not sure, like because of the whole borders, like are the borders the same, like that when Zionism was taking effect very recently in our history, to me, I see it more as, I'm not sure, I haven't necessarily dived deep into that yet, the end times necessarily, and I feel like there's always a chance that we could be wrong about it. Not to say that you shouldn't be convinced by a view more than others, but it's more like there's always a possibility that we're wrong about that. So maybe don't base your views on today's on Zionism based off of end times. For me, it's the reasons that more so that the holy sites and the reality of the Middle East situation, and that I'm also, it's a political argument too, that I'm in favor of democracy in the Middle East and Christianity, and the roots of Christianity are compatible with some of Judaism's views. So I would rather Judaism, not the Marxist type of figures, but the people that want to preserve religious history prior to Islam. I want them to always possess the rights of the Holy Land, and we can see that that's not completely the case. That's my reason. I want it to, I don't want our enemies that are indeed in the Middle East, I'm not saying everyone, I'm saying the political enemies or the people that hold to religious Islamic views that are indeed persecuting Christians in particular. Yeah, I don't want persecution of Christians to happen in the world, so I'm going to be in favor of whoever is going to hold hands peacefully with America, and that's what I want to thrive on the other side of the world, in the Middle East. There are a lot of reasons to be pro-Israel, and there are reasons to be against leaders that are in place in Israel and all of that, and I believe we need to be better educated about what's going on over there too, and not just like how we started in the beginning, blindly trust anyone just because we are in favor of Israel, and asking questions doesn't make you a anti-Semitic person, and but prejudice does make you one. Okay, I'm done. Thanks so much for watching. If you watched the whole video, please leave me an emoji in the comments section, or leave me, I watched the whole thing. Bye guys.